Hello everyone to this new episode from Hadith Tech podcast. And today we are welcoming Elena Lape. How are you?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How was your day? or
Yeah, day's just starting. I'm currently in London, so it's 10:16 in the morning. I
oh,
normally
that
work US hours, so this is like early morning for me.
yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, for the podcast today, we would love to get to know you. So would you like to start with a short introduction about who are you do and what are you doing right now?
Sure. So my name is Elena Lape. I'm Lithuanian originally, so that's how my name's pronounced. Um, I am a founder of Holopin, which is a digital badge platform. It's a company I started about 2 years ago now. So we offer APIs and integrations for companies to issue digital badges. So for things like certifications, event attendance, achievements, open source contributions, etc., just as a sort of mark of recognition and the mark of appreciation. And people can collect those digital badges. So we also offer the collector, the user side as well. So each badge that is received can be shared on social media. It can also be added on digital badge boards, which can be embedded across websites, etc. And there's no NFTs involved.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's interesting.
yeah, yeah. We get this asked like all the time, like, "Oh, okay, so is this another like Web3 thing?" And we're like, no.
Just like simple one.
Yeah, just simple Web2.
Yeah, that's great. So I will get I would love to get to know more about like Holopin, but like before going there, I would like to ask you, how did you start in programming? So basically,
Yeah,
was it something that you liked, or did you study in university for that? And how was your journey?
yeah, yeah. It was a bit of both. Like part of it came from university, part of it before. So, I started with programming when I was around middle to high school. At first, it started with like modding browser games. Don't want to expand on that too much. Not sure how ethical that was, but anyway, I figured that you can create code and things change on a website and like you can make things that everybody in the world can see. So my programming journey was very much or it started rather in web development, so making simple websites, etc. But it wasn't really until university where I think I got more so into the engineering side of things, and so actually building bigger applications. My path was, and I would love to learn about your experience with this as well. But it was hackathons for me,
Ah, that's
especially
good.
university hackathons.
Yeah, and that's great. So what was like the most interesting hackathon that you already joined?
Most interesting hackathon. Um, so I went to university in Edinburgh. One of my favorite hackathons, like I have, it was the Edinburgh Hackathon. We call it
Yeah.
Hack the Borough. Scotland's largest 24-hour hackathon, where students would just like get together from the entire country to build things over 24 hours. Some other interesting ones that I've been to, I went to Hack the North, which was in Canada in Waterloo. That was a lot of fun just because the scale of that hackathon was just wow. I think maybe in Edinburgh, yeah, we would get like 200 people, and it's like wow, a lot.
Yeah.
There, it's like over 1,000, and it's so many programmers. And then another interesting one was the NYU AD, so NYU Abu Dhabi Hackathon,
Yeah.
which was social good for the Arab world hackathon. That was 2017 maybe. So that was also interesting because it was not student organized, but rather university, so NYU AD organized.
Yeah.
Um, so that was also very interesting and lots of fun.
That's interesting. And how did you see the difference between like the university organized and like the student organized hackathon?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I guess in my experience, when an event is run by students, and I used to also run the Edinburgh Hackathon, it's a little bit more sort of hmm, how to say it? Ah, uh, you know, scrappy. We would use university premises for would sleep on the floors and get all the sort of tables together from wherever we could and sleeping bags, etc., just to
Yeah,
get as many students as we could because we were like responsible for all of our finances. Um, with the well, specifically with the NYUAD one, and also some of the other more corporate ones, like say company ones organized that
yeah,
I've attended. It had more of like an official, you know, event sort of shirt and tie. feel
yeah.
like both really really fun experiences and just like very different ways.
Yeah, and like that's great. Like for me, I even feel like those kind of university organized ones have like more, let's say, uh, facilities that they are provided for them, and that they could have like extra resources than that, the students one.
Yeah, yeah, like that's definitely the case. I believe that the like that hackathon in particular, it's now become a quantum computing hackathon. So that's
Yeah,
not just not many students can get access to those sorts of resources. And yeah, like the yeah, that's the main difference really. But it's all, just programmers coming together and hacking something, like
yeah,
same
and
vibe.
then it's still social event for
Yeah, yeah.
programmers. That's great. And from the hackathons, like I think you are during your university or before or around that time you were involved with MLH, the Major League Hack, and how was it like? How did that help you during that time for you, like in your university or even you like in your career?
Yeah, so Major League Hacking, they've been around for a while now. Before I started attending those hackathons, but they, at least during the time when I was active in the or more active in the scene, they were sort of the hackathon league. So they, um, people sort of compete within hackathons, or students compete within hackathons, but then also hackathons kind of compete with each other. I don't want to say compete with each other, but like it's just a larger league. Um, so I've attended a bunch of hackathons that were in Major League Hacking,
Yeah,
or they were Major League Hacking events. Um, if not the vast majority of them. So that was Edinburgh, Hack the North, Waterloo, which I mentioned, Penapps, Hack UPC, a bunch of UK ones as well. Um, those events, yeah, I think what's great about MLH was that because Major League Hacking would have their sponsors as well, in addition to the ones that students can attract for their hackathons. So, we just get more challenges that we could work on, since then they're the largest like sponsor pool overall, and more prizes, etc.
yeah.
But then I've also been to the, what's it called? It's like somewhere lost in my brain. But Hackon, there we go. Have you been to
Oh,
Hackon?
I get invited, but like I couldn't go there. I got invited this year.
Good fun. If you
Yeah,
get a
it
chance to
was.
go.
I know, like that. I heard about that hackathon is like one of the largest hackathons in like in the USA, and you will get like exposed to the people there and the different culture, the different, let's say, organizations, because of like when you go between a country and another country, you will see the difference between the like community and how stuff works. But like unfortunately, this year I couldn't go, and I got
Well,
invited by
hopefully
the way
next
by
year.
like GitHub education, so it was just like, uh, yeah. So that's it.
Nice. It's yeah, it attracts sort of hackathon organizers and people who are, like yourself, active in these communities. So if you get
Yeah.
a chance to go, highly recommend.
I will try that next year, hopefully. Awesome. And from the hackathon, like you mentioned, the prizes and the stuff that we are getting there. So, uh, have like were you one of the people who collect a lot of prizes and stickers, and how did that convert to be like to your starting a startup?
Sort of. Um, I was definitely and still am a sticker collector.
Awesome.
Which of course going to different events is gonna land you with a bunch. With regards to prizes, yes, I would need to check my dev post to remember which like challenges and which prizes I've won in the past.
Yeah.
But I think for me it was more about like, especially when a hackathon was international, um, travel was reimbursed, sponsored
Yeah. And that would be awesome.
by, yeah, yep. So that was also, you get to go to a different country, build stuff together with people who are also into building stuff, um, and win some prize. Yeah, I'm just gonna. But they were, I think, like every hackathon was slightly different in terms of, sometimes you want to pick a very specific sponsor challenge, and sometimes um, you want to just get together with your friends and build something really cool,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't necessarily, you know, win a prize or
Yeah.
something. More like challenge yourself. Um, but yeah, I mean, Holopin is partially, definitely, definitely influenced by my love for stickers.
Oh,
Um,
that's great. And for that, like, how did the idea start for you to get like something as a digital badge company?
yeah. So there are two stories to this.
Yeah.
One is sort of the 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 one that I like to start with, which is, I had a bunch of stickers on my laptop. I was changing my machines to my current one. This was November or October 2021, I think. Saw that, actually machine is different, so I cannot put all my stickers on a different back of my laptop
Yeah.
without ruining them. And they were things that I've collected from events, things that I've gotten from really cool companies, things that I've yeah collected as like achievements or from dev tools that I really liked. Um, and so yeah, I thought, why couldn't it all just be digital? Also, with COVID starting, et cetera, remote work, blah blah blah, all of that becoming more important. How can people showcase their achievements online? And so, yeah, that's how Holopin was born. And that was, we're not the first digital badge service platform, but we are certainly the first one that has such a large developer focus.
Oh,
So that's why we have like GitHub integrations and Discord integrations, etc., to really recreate that feeling of stickers on um, people's back of their laptops, people's backs of their lap. You know what I mean?
yeah, I get that.
Um,
Yeah. So they can have it on their GitHub profile as well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the sort of, fun story. And then the other one, which is a bit more boring, is that, when this idea came around, I realized that there's quite a, big business opportunity in this as well. I was doing DevRel at the time, and quite a bit of engineering work and building various integrations, interacting with lots of different dev tools, and saw this as a way for companies to be able to reward developers in a meaningful way without having to print more swag,
Yeah.
leading to lots of like costs with shipping and things getting lost and stuck at the border, etc.
Yeah, I get that. And even you will have like with the swag shipping stuff, you will have the custom declaration and whatever, and sometimes it just like didn't arrive. It doesn't arrive to the people.
Oh, yeah. This is like, I remember. Yeah, I mean, I used to also work at GitHub. It's shipping things to people is hard
Yeah.
um, at scale.
Yeah, and like there's no one single solution for that. I know that like for example, like when we organize something for in like that will get we will get support from GitHub. We need to have like and tell them like a month ago before the event, and you will need to get like the custom declaration, and you will need to have like some people sent to the government to get all the stuff that you are getting, which is just swags and gifts, but like it, it's just like a lot of stuff to do. And what is the other story, by the way, that you are mentioning for Holopin? You mentioned like there's two stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the first story is the stickers. The
Yeah.
second story is the business opportunity,
Yeah.
really.
Okay.
So like the everything's interrelated. So so yeah. And yeah, I figured out that my clients at the time, and the companies that I was working with would appreciate having such a product. Like I wanted it to exist,
Yeah.
and so I set out to do it.
That's great. That's awesome. And from that, like, from the time like you started the company, which is like almost 2 years ago till now, I think you were one of the largest company growing in that time for the badges, which you recently just like joined Hacktoberfest, and all of the swags in Hacktoberfest were turned to digital badges.
Yeah. So we launched, actually our launch coincided last year with Hacktoberfest.
Yeah,
So Hacktoberfest was sort of our first big customer, and big partner, really. Like they're amazing. I love working with their team. If anyone from DigitalOcean is listening right now or will listen to this,
we will let them
you
know.
people are amazing. Yeah, all the phrases go there. But yeah, people really loved getting the badges, and this year, yeah, that, as you're saying, it is true that in the past, so for some context, in the past, when you participated in Hacktoberfest and you completed the challenge, you were eligible to receive some physical goodies in the mail.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, that all adds up to a really big environmental footprint, and also, like we just spoke about, things getting stuck at the border, at customs, etc., etc. Like all of these logistical issues, it's really, really hard to do the stuff, even for like, sending 50 t-shirts, let alone 50,000 t-shirts.
yeah,
So following last year's success and people's appreciation for Holopin, this year all the swag was digital, so digital badges, which included cool things. Oh, it's still ongoing, still a couple of days left, but customizable avatars that you can earn accessories for, to then be imprinted on your digital badge, as well as digital reward kits were also distributed digitally through Holopin. So you receive almost like this scratch card if you complete Hacktoberfest. And you can reveal coupon codes and special links from other companies who are gifting you things. So yeah, so we've been, yeah, about 2 years since company was started, about a year after we've launched, and so since that time, um, we've we've definitely crossed 100,000 users. Trying to find some stats, but not might not be able to pull it off right now. But
it's
around
fine.
that time, around that, yeah,
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 that's awesome. That's really interesting. Like how like you see that this kind of appreciation from the hack, hacking community to this kind of stuff, and that because like you see like as you mentioned like the badges that we get from events or from ha- Hacktoberfest is just like something that get like I mean an emotional meaning for the people, and sometimes they don't like to get rid of them. And when you have like when you are a sticker collector, you will have just like one big box of all of the stuff that you have, but like you don't use them.
yeah.
And from this like perspective, how do you feel like that this kind of badges and gifts would help and would make people more engaged in the community? How do you feel that? How do you see the impact of that?
Yeah, yeah. So the impact is twofold. One is on the users and the collectors, of course, and then the other one's on companies. So with making folks more engaged. So essentially, every action and interaction can be represented with a digital reward,
Okay.
which is permanently lives on Holopen. Um, so things like loyalty, event participation, listening to a podcast, etc., can all be rewarded with the digital badge.
Yeah.
Um, where engagement really builds is we have features like evolving badges,
Mm.
where instead of just earning a badge, which can be like a bigger thing, like earn a certification or like was the first person to complete something, um, you earn points, which we call holobytes, and that
Yeah.
builds to like a bigger badge. So think almost like a Tamagotchi experience. And so people are incentivized, and we know this especially with programmers who already love collecting their green GitHub commits on the graph, who love collecting their Stack Overflow points, etc. With again point systems and that gamification, we believe that we can make work and just programming in general and open source also more fun. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really awesome. And how do you feel like about the connection with that into like some kind of like, do you see that the organizations can use that inside their organization without having some kind of extra or external events?
Yeah. We do believe that one of the benefits of like laptop stickers are that even if you earn it at an event or like internal event,
Yeah.
you can still put that on your laptop, even if people who see your sticker, they might not necessarily understand what it's for, but and it's really nice. So we do encourage companies, organizations who use Holopen to allow folks to, you know, they can make the notes or the earning criteria private, but we recommend that they make the actual stickers or the actual badges public because
Yeah.
it's just nice for the person to have that. But yeah, certainly we have folks who use it for rewarding, work tasks, especially our HoloBytes features. We have just updated our Slack integration, which should be, if it's not been released already, then it should be released over today, tomorrow. I think you'll likely get an email about this. So that's basically the perfect scenario. Oh, you responded to my email. Excellent. Here's a holobyte.
Okay, that's interesting use case. I didn't think about like email responding could be turned into like some kind of gamification style stuff.
Just making work a bit more fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. And for that, like, does the organization admins or managers who would give the points, or was like anyone in the company can give that points?
Yeah, so with things like holobytes, which are really not, they're not exactly digital certifications. They can be permanent records,
Yeah,
but we want people to share them all across the company, but these settings are all customizable, like who can award holobytes. But generally, I remember even back at GitHub, we used to have a bot called a Sparkle bot. And so each time, you wanted to appreciate someone or give someone a little bit of love, you would just do, I think, dot sparkle um, for Abdurrahman for being an awesome host. And then the Sparkle bot would respond saying, you know, great, have 15 sparkles. And it was
oh,
just, they didn't lead to anything, but it was a lot of fun.
yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, that's awesome. From that, like, since you mentioned GitHub, would you like to talk a little bit about like the work you have done there and what kind of like job you had there, and then how you moved to Devrel?
Sure, sure. So let's see. This was 2019. Yeah. So I was part of GitHub Education, working specifically with the Student Developer Pack.
Yeah,
Um, the Student Developer Pack is a program where if you're a student, prove your studentship and you sign up to GitHub. You don't just get free GitHub or free GitHub Pro. You also get access to a bunch of other cloud and dev tools and whatnot. So my responsibility was partnerships for
yeah,
that program. So within the year that I was there, we went from like 15 to over 100 different companies within the pack. Also, user growth exploded. So I was liaising and talking to all the new partners, and onboarding them and coordinating the each time, each inclusion, each launch, because we'd launch them in batches, as well as troubleshoot and help with any technical integrations to enable that. So yeah, I'd say that was one of the most sort of, I got to meet and I got to use a lot of dev tools
Yeah.
in a fairly short amount of time. Like that work by default was basically, I did that as for a living, like using different dev tools,
Yeah.
and trying them and meeting with them. Um, then afterwards, for a couple of years after, this was also a few years ago, um, I mostly did independent consulting, and so
Yeah.
that was developer relations, for the most part, as well as some engineering. So
Yeah.
I've always kind of operated without job titles, like
Yeah.
especially if I was doing something for a client, like I would just trust them to put something, under my name when I was representing them or whatever. Um, but essentially helping these DevTool companies, I've been in DevTools my entire life, um, to get user trust, be more relatable to developers. And that would be done through, I'd craft a developer relation strategy. Like how do you reach these people, or how do you talk to the developers who use them? And I have this like pet peeve with companies trying to build a community as an answer to everything, when it's
Yeah.
like people are fatigued with like community. Um, I'd also build various integrations to make, again, developers' lives easier, especially when it came to these like more traditional, boring, not open source, but enterprise tools,
Yeah.
that people don't really use outside of work. Like you're not gonna host your blog on Kubernetes. If you are, then wow.
Yeah,
Um,
that's something else. That's another level.
yeah. Um, so yeah. I'd say the access to seeing and working with so many dev tools just pushed me deeper into that world,
Yeah.
and I really found my element in there. And so I ended up floating around that world for a while.
That's really awesome. Like, it's really interesting that you started with like working in an already a dev company, which is like GitHub or something like that, and that let you have all this opportunity to try all dev tools. And from that, let's say experience, how did you feel? How did you see like building trust and community with developers would be like? What, or do you have advices for companies that would like to try to build their own communities and build trust with developers? What would you suggest them to do?
Great question. I'm writing an article series about this and how to craft developer relations strategy and communities, or why you shouldn't build a community or why you should build in the community, depending on the tool.
Yeah.
Um, it's really company specific. I would say the one thing really is to understand. It sounds cliche, but what exactly is your goal?
Yeah.
Right? I think a lot of companies, when they think of like developer relations goals, they just want an audience that they can market to and they can convert. It's not as straightforward. You
Yeah.
cannot just like gather a community, inverted quotation marks, inverted commas, um, to then like, expect that people are going to be really excited seeing your company name and your logo and just like want to buy your product, just because there's a community in a Slack channel or a Discord. um, I think it's more about finding, so yeah, for a company finding that goal, or for a dev tool finding that goal, what is a niche in the developer world where you can really help?
Yeah.
Whether it's providing access to developers to more opportunities, like let's say work opportunities, um, in their given like space or expertise. Sometimes it's things like um, building a community, let's say not around necessarily a technology, but a location. So all the JavaScript developers in Istanbul, for instance, if that doesn't exist, that can also be, somewhere where a company or a particular existing organization can tap into. Um, and so finding that niche, finding where you really yourself as an organization, as a company, can really help, um, that then creates this resonance amongst those developers within that particular group, within that particular community, that you know makes them remember you,
Yeah.
and credit you for the good that you've done. Not necessarily because you blasted your logo all over the place and you just like invited them to Slack channel and then at all or at channel all the time. Like, no, don't do that.
That's kind of
It,
spammy for the
oh,
developers.
yeah. But finding that niche, building those individual connections, and trust that it will take a long time. Almost, it's such a, I would say maybe 4 5 years ago, it was really when developer relations, like as a thing, started ramping up.
Yeah.
Um, and so every company was hiring a community manager, anything, giving them just like, this task of like make these developers buy. Um, and the reality is it's a long process. It's hard to measure
Yeah.
because you're not going to get just like it's not like an ad where you click on an ad and then you can measure like, okay, did this person end up buying or not. It's more like, they heard of your company's name, then they like changed jobs twice, then the company was trying to pick their like employer was trying to pick a different database, and the developer said, oh, I've heard of, I don't know, Planet Scale, whatever. um and
Yeah.
that's like a conversion, but how do you measure that?
Yeah, and like that's interesting here, like because usually when you go to developers, it's hard to market for them, and when you go with normal traditional marketing tools, which as you mentioned, like ads and click beat stuff, like it's not something that will attract them, and they would prefer to go with something to learn or read about it. Then they would like to do it in a side project, then they might use it in their company.
Yeah. One thing is certainly that, and I think it's a very good point about side projects. And
Yeah,
also, what I found in my career is that developer advocacy is it presents different challenges when you've got a tool that can be used in a side project, um, and then one that cannot, like, a Kubernetes deployment facilitating tool for multiple clusters. Um, it's kind of like the goals are, or not the goals, the sentiment is the same. We're like,
yeah,
yeah, exactly as you say. Ultimately, we want developers to have learned about it in some way, or maybe read some content. Exactly like you mentioned, um, that help them understand a particular concept, maybe about the tool that they're doing to help them be better at their job.
yeah.
Um, and then ultimately, get them to try it. So they then recommend it to their teammates.
Yeah, and from that, like you mentioned that it's like this kind of cycle is kind of take too long time, and it could be hard to measure as well. So how do you feel like the time that would take to for a company to when they start their own DevRel till they get like the results of that? I remember that I read on like PyTorch mentioned that that the real effect life cycle could take 6 to 7 months or something like that based on the company. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would say 6 months is probably a minimum. I don't think it makes it also like it depends on what company, what stage the company is at, all of these very individual things. But I think at least 6 months is, let's say you're an existing established dev tool. um 6 month iterations make, yeah, minimums. Basically, I agree with PyTorch. I'm trying to think like if it could be done every quarter, every cycle. I think for a startup where you need to move extremely quickly,
Yeah,
the goals there are a little bit different. It's more about attracting developers rather than getting them to necessarily convert byte for their entire organization. Slightly different metrics that especially VCs look for, which is like a whole different issue, but we can get into that at some point
yeah,
later. um but yeah, with things like, let's say part of your developer relations strategy is, um there are things like revamping documentation, just making it more accessible, better for developers, which can be done, I mean, depending on how many people are working on, anywhere from 5 days to 2 months. That's maybe something that can be measured immediately, like through things like, how much time do developers spend on the documentation website? Have our support tickets increased or decreased? But then there are things that are like, you know, conference attendance, and you're just not going to be able to go to one every weekend. It's too
yeah.
expensive and not enough people.
That's great. And from that, like, how do you feel like what would make a good strategy for for companies to start, or is it like something that's different between a company and a company?
It really depends. Yeah, company to company. I think one of the most like com- common, not common. When I did consulting, I feel like a lot of companies came to us wanting to build a community.
Yeah,
It wasn't even DevRel, not DevRel. It was specifically build a community, which they had heard from, I don't know, their colleagues about. And it also seems like, every company has a community. Um, Sorry, the question that were, how did I get to this?
no,
Oh,
the
you were
question is
saying
like
what did
how,
they,
oh, the question is like what is the good strategy, so you could go with that. It's just like,
no,
yeah,
no, but yeah. So good strategies. Reality is, yeah, like it depends so much on the individual company where they're currently at.
yeah,
The good strategy is probably honestly to find someone who's good at this and then have a chat with them, because the one size fits all. Taking an example from a different industry, but I talk like about community, but I just thought of this because I was watching a YouTube video earlier and I saw one of those, like, ad reads of like, and first of all, a word from our sponsors, use NordVPN to blah, 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 blah. And then it like shows you a screen share or a screenshot of NordVPN and says, with this discount code, you can use whatever. Everyone skips through those ads. Nobody
yeah,
actually watches them. I don't know what the conversion metrics are on those, but at this point, like, people are fatigued with them and you can skip them. But
yeah,
every company still does it. Like, why are the advertisers doing this when, like, the viewers are, I mean,
It's-
yes, when you're like someone like NordVPN, you can like blast it all over the place because you have so much money. You're like, yeah, sure. But they're like, it's not a one size fits all thing. And so the same thing with communities. Just because it seems like every company around you has a community doesn't necessarily mean that you need to create, a Slack channel or you need to create a Discord channel. Um, and so, yeah, I would say the advice or good strategies is, community is such a big buzzword, so that I would like specifically call out that if you think that you need a community, take a step back and think what what your goals could be potentially instead, and what existing communities can you tap into, as opposed to like building one around yourself, because the competition is wild.
yeah,
um so like I said, like maybe location based, or maybe existing technologies, or partnerships with other communities, or sponsoring a different community. Um, and then yeah, hiring people who get developers.
That's interesting. Like when you mention hiring people, because like when you hire someone who is like interested in this kind of stuff, you will hire the knowledge that they have instead of like building from scratch.
Yeah. Um, it's like it's a bit of both. Like there are general principles, right? Like how do you relate to your developers, and how do you, you know, maintain them engaged, etc. I feel like,
Yeah.
as Holopin, we offer a solution to that particular thing, and that's like part of a bigger strategy. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. You are right. That yeah, hiring people who've been through this, or doing various bits of experimentation, just seeing what works. I'm a big fan of just throwing stuff out in there and then seeing what sticks and what works. Um,
Yeah.
is the way to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. And from like since you mentioned like this and we talked about communities, you mentioned like metrics as well. So what kind of metrics that people could take and like how that could be measured? Because like as you mentioned, sometimes just like someone will hear about you and like after changing their jobs 2 times they might use their product. But like what are the metrics that we could do or think about?
Depends on the strategy entirely. If you're organizing events, it could be how many people signed up or attended your event. If you're measuring like if you're an open source project, there are like basic things like how many people started the project realistically, how often do you look at your own stars, um, how many people talk about your software and recommend to other developers, are proud to sort of they are excited about your product or the tools that you're building, or they credit you for some positive influence in their life and their career.
Yeah.
Again, this is like one of the things that we as a company kind of like step in for, because it's a permanent record that like you can see how many people are excited to not necessarily go out and talk about your company, but just be very comfortable, very happy with sharing their sticker, putting it on your laptop,
Yeah.
inverted commas, so to speak. um like I think I mentioned the example before where, if part of your strategy is improving the documentation and making it better, things like support ticket load, um, time spent on the documentation website, support question types, can be really important metrics. They might sound like a bit boring or more, or like less exciting than, ooh, how many people tweeted about you, or how many people shared your blog post, or whatever. But those are ultimately the things that companies tend to care about because they reduce their own costs.
Yeah.
So, you know, less support staff hurdles. But yeah, this is like a never ending thing in DevRel. I have a bunch of DevRel books behind me, and I swear half of them are like, how do you measure success of your developer relations program?
And that's like like a question with no answer.
Yeah. The best thing that you can do, like I said, is experiment, sort of listen to your, whether it's users, your internal developers. You can always ask them for advice. Like realistically, if
Yeah.
you're selling to engineers, if you're building something for engineers, you need to talk to your own engineers. Um, but yeah,
That's
I'm
that's
not sure how
interesting.
we ended here,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Like for me, like when you mentioned like this kind of like there is a lot of books that discussing this kind of issue, it just like remind me of this kind of how to make a video viral or how to go viral on social media when you are just like starting, and just like the same kind of no answer to this kind of questions.
Yeah. I think in the past and now as well, what's really powerful and what you really want is not necessarily like, an audience or like a mass of people, like
Yeah.
followers or stars or whatever. It's more about those few individuals who it's so important to, maintain that contact with, maybe build ambassador programs, etc., etc., because they're your biggest advocates, and they're going to be the ones who talk about you to other developers. And
Yeah.
developers trust developers more than they do trust ads or like someone's Slack channel announcement.
Yeah. And even like learning from peer people or like from developers is much easier than learning from something that or someone who is not around you. Because like for me, I see like in communities usually like when you are when you want to learn new technology, usually you learn it from your friend or you hear it from a friend and then you just try it and you can get ask them. But like if you go online or if you just like put stuff online without having this kind of ambassador programs, it could be hard to reach this kind of people.
Yeah.
Mm. And some companies like use open source as a way to find like in dev tools to attract people to them. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, open source as a whole, again, it's a field or sphere that I've been in my pretty much my whole career. Um, Use open source to attract folks to their paid products. I'm going to assume is what you mean.
Yeah,
Um, I think that makes sense from a business perspective, from a user's perspective. Like, I think a company, let's say that has some sort of a paid offering, but also has an open core infrastructure with a free um, offer for developers or small teams, or let's say maybe they're just building it out in the open for everyone to just see the code and have folks contribute it to. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. It's certainly a viable business model, and I think it's great that they support themselves, those companies, by selling to large enterprise companies and
yeah,
big support plans. But at the same time, folks from smaller teams or individual developers can benefit from using that software, as well as if they are using it, then they're obviously more incentivized to squash any bugs or propose any new features, and in that way become contributors or maintainers of the project. So the more dependence a project or the more habitants a house has, the more sort of everyone collectively is incentivized to keep it keep it up to speed with the rest of the
yeah.
world. And
And keep it clean. Can you hear me?
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
awesome.
something started playing.
Yeah, that's fine. I just like mentioned like as you mentioned like if you have more people in the house, more people would like to keep it like clean or like it's kind of you remind me of like dormitory life.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, I don't know if that was a very good example, because now that I think about, some of the student dorms that I've lived in, um, it's like not always the case. You do need, you need the core maintainer,
Yeah,
someone, who has a salary, etc. So I think maybe that's not that bad of an example.
yeah, I get
Um,
that.
but yeah.
Awesome. And how do you feel like the future of like let's say open source and community people and community in general is like from your perspective and from digital badges perspective?
Yeah. So the way, I mean, open source is only growing and it will only grow. Um, Perhaps they will have different licenses that might be, what we've seen by some companies lately do. But open source is only growing in both like the maker space, as well as enterprise space. And so, you know, more folks and more applications depend on it, more contributors, more fixes, more contributions in general we should expect. The way that projects can attract contributions Um, it, where digital badges come in is like for projects to attract those fixes and those contributions. Um, some rewards are needed, especially when money is not infinite. And at the same time, a developer right now, like you can go and fix a bug, or you can submit a pull request or make a commit on anything open source. Right now, there's that someone else can really do it.
Yeah.
Like you can do it, but also like your roommate should really fix that. There's this like dual thing. Some people, the more folks you have, the more developers will stand out and like sign up to the challenge, but also to attract or to for you to actually take that step to contribute to open source, etc. Um, the fact that it can be rewarded and it can stay as a permanent record that you can use in your resume, you can use to get other more exciting jobs or more opportunities for yourself in that space, perhaps where that dev tool is in. That's also where Holopin comes in, and that's where we see the opportunity with digital badges. Um, and yes. So I think with open source specifically, it's just nice that with tools like Holopin, it works in building like these symbiotic relationships and also build affinity with a particular project.
Yeah.
You can, going back to the HoloBytes example and the Tamagotchi, there are so many, realistically, there are so many projects that you're probably using, even if you're, building anything with JavaScript, essentially, you can look at how many node modules your application.
Yeah, and you will have this kind of large file that you always download when you start your project.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and that you can't update anything because it might break the previous dependency.
Yeah.
Story of my life. But yeah, like there is, a bit of a I don't want to say competition, but yes, essentially competition between projects. Like if there is someone who just wants to contribute to open source, they might go for the one that acknowledges you, that appears to have a more welcoming developer experience,
Yeah.
developer contributor experience as well. And so rewards are a big part of that.
That's great. And how do you feel like about like the, let's say, the business opportunity that you have that will be in the future for your Holobean?
Yeah. So I mean the business prospects look great for us.
Yeah.
So not gonna lie there. We have not only survived but excelled without venture capital. This is like one of the things that we're taking pride in.
Yeah, that's really
That might
awesome.
be a thing in the future. Yeah, well, we'll see. We might like we'll see. We'll see
Yeah.
how where we take the company and how we scale it further. Um, but yeah, so Holopin is tightly knit with open source because we started off with building something for developers
Yeah.
and focusing a lot on our GitHub and our Discord integrations. And developers are the ones who are familiar with the laptop stickers and the Stack Overflow points and all of that, like collectors' experiences. So open source is one way, and we do have an open source program, but also every dev tool that is essentially commercial, as well as enterprises who use Holopin within their organizations to award various tasks, to award internal professional development, to create records of those. Um, that's how we that's how we you know that's the revenue maker for us,
Yeah.
and also that's how we are able to support um, open source and our free plans,
Yeah,
so
that's really awesome.
building it sustainably.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you, as you mentioned, you have survived without venture capital till now. And like, I know like a lot of people who have like got venture capital support, they might fail, or they will just like not continue, but like because like, they don't find the market product fit, which is something that a hard question for them to find when you get like support at the beginning. But like for you, you just like started from the opposite side, which is like you saw the market and you saw the product, and then you started working from there.
we're always learning from our users and from our customers. I
Yeah,
think the ultimate goal is, you know, whether venture funded or not, yeah, is to find product market fit and to build something that people really, really want and can use easily, and really want their employers to get for them, or just really, I mean, in case of our badges, like, we love seeing people wanting to collect more and asking who else is issuing them. And I
yeah,
think we're getting just some really nice signal there. And it's also nice to, work on a fun project. That's like one of the big things that I've set out to do personally, and something that we value within our company as well, is that we just want to make the internet more fun.
yeah,
And while we're doing that, we also want to have more fun. Like, yes, of course, we're serious, but we also have a lot of fun.
yeah. Like, yeah, I get that. Just like you get me again to the hackathon vibes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everything is a hackathon. Everything, like, okay, every startup is probably a bit of a hackathon, which is why,
Yeah,
startups are fun. Um, but yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I think we almost like around the time for the podcast. How do you feel? Do you have like any final words or thoughts you would like to share?
Any final words or thoughts I like to share? Yeah. If you are, I mean, the Holopin plug, obligatory.
Yeah,
If you're an open source project or a dev tool, or a company who just wants to reward their users, customers, employees, etc., with fun sticker-like digital badges, do get in touch. Elena at holopin.io, or just go to our website, holopin.io. Otherwise, honestly, just good vibes. Have fun. I'm excited for the future to know about you, but be excited for the future. Um, and winter this come. I don't know. I'm just babbling at this point.
yeah, I get that. It's fine. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's fine. So yeah, and yeah, so thank you for joining the podcast today. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. It was like very great to know about Holpin and the ideas that you have, and hopefully we'll get some people to use it, and you will see it in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, and see you in the future then. And for the people who are listening to us today, we hopefully we'll see you like in the next episode, and we'll see you. Have a great time. See ya. Thank you again, Elena.
Thank you.